Dude, the amount of like different inputs is driving me crazy. Of like between Apple and Microsoft and like just how many different attachments, like USB, USB-C, like the iPhone one. It's just I feel like I never have the input to attachment that I need for any of this shit.
I just hit record.
Fuck them.
Well, hello to anyone listening. Hello to anyone listening.
Welcome
You
back.
might be, yeah, welcome back. You might be listening to this on the way to the Glamping show. We are putting this out on the Monday, which is why it's a little bit early on your feeds. We thought it'd be good to have something to listen to on the way to the Glamping show if you are heading that way. As a reminder, do come and say hello to myself at the Posh Outdoors booth, which is booth 501. And then Connor, what booth are you on?
I don't know the number, but Sage Outdoor Advisory will have a booth. So if you want to chat about feasibility studies, raising capital, or just, have a quick, 3-minute consultation on your business concept and get some feedback, we'll be there. I'm also going to be presenting with our president, Sherry Halala. We're going to have one of the back rooms to do a presentation on all the quantitative data that we've collected over the last year. So we did the same presentation in 2022. We're bringing it back in 2024 to essentially go over the changes and the updates that the industry has experienced in the last 24 months. And we'll be talking about some really cool things like what unit types are seeing the highest rates, what amenities are driving the highest rates, how that might have changed, and the growth of the industry and some really cool insights along those lines. So make sure to come. It's definitely hands down going to be the best presentation at the Glamping show.
And if you see Connor and I out in Denver on Wednesday night, no, you didn't.
Yeah, where are we going?
That's to be figured out. But yeah, well, everyone, yeah, we do recommend you go to the show. I mean, it's probably a little bit late by now if you've not made plans and you're listening by now. But we will look forward to seeing you if you do come and say hello. Just a bit of admin on the podcast. We got some more feedback last week. Thank you very much, Chuck Malloy. He gave us some kind words which boosted our dopamine levels. But what we really wanted and what he gave us was some constructive feedback as well. And he suggested that the audio levels might be improved. And it's something that we have been trying to fix. I've had issues with my microphone and then my laptop, but there's definitely some things that we can do on the editing side. So the feedback has been shared, and hopefully the audio levels will be a little bit more consistent from now on. Again, if anyone has any constructive feedback, any kind words, whatever you want, just email nick@glampytech.com, and we will try and get it fixed or work around you guys. So thank you again, Chuck. Connor, today we've got 2 returning favourites.
So near and dear to my heart, and that is Blake Smith of Walden Retreats outside of Austin in Texas Hill Country, and Bygnal Dutson of Open Sky outside of Zion. And I'm a big fan favorite of both of these guys. Blake was my mentor at the Acton MBA, where I first got into the outdoor space. He was launching his business. He was the grade ahead of me, and he has been a mentor and someone that I've been able to call the last 5+ years, and he's always made himself available to me. So I can vouch that he's just a great guy and a good friend and mentor. And then Bygnal Dutson, who has filled a similar role more recently in the last 2 to 3 years. And I'm really excited to have both these guys on the show. I think they've been, in many ways, living parallel lives in their glamping startup journeys. There's a lot of similarities. They're both outside of, pretty strong demand drivers in terms of Zion and Austin. They both have hot climates with a little bit of a slowdown in the summer season, or at least hot weather to deal with. And then they both use Bush Tech safari tents, super high end, wood floors, glass doors, kitchens, ACs. They both have a really, really high-end safari product. I think they're both getting average rates north of 350, north of 4, even 5, 6, 700. And they both have an unyielding dedication to the customer and the outdoor experience, and really trying to connect guests back to nature. Bygnal, if you've heard him speak before on the show, his customer experience is, the moment when the guests can be on their deck enjoying the glamping golden hour and watch the stars come out and just take in that view and the beautiful nature surrounding them. and Blake Smith's customer experience founded by the book Walden, and just the importance of getting back to nature and kind of the panacea that it can be. And so they've just both created these phenomenal high quality businesses using safari tents and accentuating nature. And then they've actually both used sage for their expansions. I think Bygnal got a feasibility study and an appraisal once when he went from 3 to 12 units, and then again when he expanded to add his F&B and more of his lodge. So Sage did the appraisal twice for him, and then for Blake Smith, we did the appraisal for his expansion as well. I think when he went from 2 to 10 units. So I know Sage has been close to their journey. I'm really familiar with their financials and their projects. So really excited for today's show.
Yeah, and that's a great summary, Connor. As usual, anyone who wants to hear the full backstories of both of these guys, then we'll link their previous episodes in the description. Blake was on pre-revamp. Bygnal has been on pre and post revamp, and actually Bygnal is probably going to be a bit more of a regular feature on the pod as well. We think he's going to be coming on a fair amount as a recurring guest, maybe even a co-host sometimes. We're looking forward to that. And we really enjoyed. I know Connor, you weren't there, but I really enjoyed the Ben and Irene kind of double operator episode that we did a few weeks ago. I think that worked pretty well. So we're definitely interested in doing more episodes like that as we are today, where we bring on two top operators and kind of let them interview each other and share ideas. And it's just, you come away from those conversations with, full of ideas, and it's always a good time. So that's Bygnal and Blake. They will be joining us shortly. If you're traveling to the Glamping show, safe journey. If not, then happy listening. And without further ado, here's Bygnal and Blake. We're live. I want to start by discussing the importance of nature to the glamping experience. Both of you have very much incorporated into your experiences. So, Blake, your site, Walden Retreats, is named after a book about a guy who goes out and lives in the wilderness and kind of observes his surroundings. Bygnal, you've spoken on the show in the past about your golden hour, where the whole thing is you want the guests to be on site on the first night and see the Milky Way and the sunset and all of that. So starting with you, Blake, I want to kind of get your perspective on just how important nature is to your glamping experience and kind of how you incorporate it into the guest experience at Walden Retreats.
Yeah. Thank you all. Well, nature is the experience. We're not selling tents. We're selling tents as a vehicle to experience being outdoors and being in nature. I mean, our mission is to make the outdoor experience more comfortable and convenient. And so we've chosen to do that through tents, and then the design of how we've built them, created them, the customer experience from the time they get to the property to the time they leave is all centered around that. So, for example, choosing soft-sided tents was intentional. They're not the most insulated, they're not the most comfortable, they're not the most even perhaps durable structures you can build, but they allow an interaction with nature that is synonymous with what people think about when they think about their childhood camping experiences. And we didn't want that to be sacrificed. And we wanted people to remember that they're staying in a tent, and when the wind blows, they're going to feel it, they're going to hear it. It may get cold, it may get really hot. That's intentional. That's not an accident. And so, other things we've done, or there's no vehicles allowed around the tents because the noise, the dust, the lights, but also we just want people to walk, just take a walk, whether it's just from the parking lot to their room and back. Just getting outside and taking a nice stroll with a loved one, or taking, an extra 10 minutes to do something. And other things like all the lighting we have on the property, we use like the lowest lumen bulbs possible. We keep all lights off whenever they're not needed, just to keep any sort of light pollution down. And so, those are all very calculated decisions that we've made, but we didn't make them from the beginning. It's all things that we've learned in the process and how to improve. And I think every day, every week, we're always looking for new ways to incorporate that into what people experience when they're on property. Like right now, we're we're finding ways for people to get rid of their phone for a period of time when they're at the property and like leave it at the front desk, check it into a lockbox for a period of time. Fun things like that that people can do to really kind of disconnect and appreciate where they are in a broader sense.
Do you just ask them at the front desk if they want to hand the phone in?
We haven't tried it yet. This is like we're workshopping. Like, hey, come and check your phone in while they walk down to the river for a few hours. Turn it off. There's various like little lock boxes and stuff you can get. So yeah, but it's just an example of how we're always trying to find ways to enhance nature being the priority over just recreating a really nice experience in a tent with Wi-Fi and all the stuff and TVs and all that. And that's not something we'll ever do. So yeah.
Have you incorporated the lockbox experience already, or is it something you're going to do?
No, it's just an idea that came up like literally last week as something that we could offer guests. Yeah,
I love it. That was something I always wanted to do at my property, and I wanted to actually try to incentivize guests to keep their phone away, ideally for the entire duration of their stay. And I always thought it would be cool to incentivize the guests and say, hey, if you don't come check your phone for 24 hours, we'll give you 20% off your next stay, or we'll bring you a complimentary drink, or like something where it's like, hey, the management really cares about you disconnecting and giving like a little extra push. Feel free to steal that.
No, that's great. Or we thought about like, if you check it in, but then you like for say 3 hours or whatever the time period is, and then you're like, I just can't stand it to come back. They have to like do 10 push-ups or I don't know, or, kind of go back on their word a little bit. Yeah.
That's actually kind of cool. Make it like a game system. Like you get rewards for so many hours that you actually keep it in there. So that way you incentivize them to like, oh, 1 more hour, I get this, or 2 more hours, or 24 hours, I get a bottle of wine.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Because everybody loves playing games, so gamify it.
What if you had a leaderboard for who left their phone in the lockbox the longest? So you're incentivizing guests to take a longer stay, but also, they could have their name on the top 10 or something like that.
That's actually a similar concept to Callum, my old business partner who founded Glam Protect UK, and he's setting up a big glamping site at this exhibition centre in Birmingham in England. And he's, I think it's still in the plans. They're basically doing some kind of competition where whoever uses the least energy in their glamping pod wins, or there's some kind of gamified element of it. And it saves them money, at least. I don't know whether it improves the guest experience, but I think there is an idea in that kind of gamification that improves the guest experience as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's a great idea as well. Where if you're on site and you're trying to minimize water and power usage, or HVAC, that is a terrific way to be like, hey, just for the next 24 hours, whichever of our 10 or 15 units uses the least, you'll get a complimentary sunset cocktail, or whatever it is. That's a good win-win.
What do you guys think is most glampers' perspective on being environmentally friendly and sustainable? Like, do you think people care about it, or do you think people like to think they care about it, but kind of don't really change who they pick as their provider of their glamping stay, for example, based on sustainability and their kind of approach to the environment?
I think there's a demographic for it, and there's individuals that attract all different types. So there's room for all different sorts of levels of being environmentally sustainable or being good stewards. To me, it's been kind of a balance, because you could take it to the point where it kind of puts you down a different pathway. If you become so focused on, say, only going with 100 miles of where you're at to source everything for your project. Or when it comes to operations, there's single-use plastics. Absolutely, if you can get rid of single-use plastics, I think everybody kind of should, and figure out other ways to be sustainable in that regards. For us, we like to use the word called stewardship. We like to be good stewards of what we have. So yes, we want to focus on those aspects, but at the same time, realize you still have to get things done. So like for us, we're fully off grid. We have to import batteries from somewhere. We have to use lithium. There's just no other ways to get around that. And for Open Sky, we focus more on the upper echelon of lifestyle guests that come and visit Zion National Park. And for them, and like the funds and the monies they're paying for, they want that top tier experience. Yes, they want to be cautious of being in nature and being sustainable, but they also want to be taken care of and pampered. So other operators, it may be more a focus for them than it is, like, say, for us.
Yeah, for us, it's nothing that I can say with confidence that people have really inquired much about. That, people don't call or email saying like, what kind of energy recycling do y'all do, or how are you? What efforts are you making to be more energy efficient or more eco-friendly? Um, but I would say we've always made decisions to be as eco-friendly as we can, um, with the construction of the units, the different various products we have. Um, I would say in our demographic in Texas, people really are not very environmentally conscious, and most of our clients are coming from 1 to 2 hours from our site, so Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, and um, just an example, we had recycling bins in the rooms, but everyone just used it as a trash can, and like a second trash can. And then we found out that our recycling provider actually wasn't recycling the end use. So we did away with the recycling bin altogether, and we've never heard a complaint said, hey, like why isn't there like a place to recycle plastic? So um, I mean, recycling is great, but if you can't actually have a destination for it, then it just becomes trash anyway. So yeah, I'd say it's a bonus for most people, but it's not really a key decision point for them.
I was surprised to hear. I think Connor, you might know this. I think Under Canvas have, I don't know whether it's showers or taps where you have to hold the tap down, and then when you release it, the water stops. Which, when I first heard about that, I was surprised because Under Canvas, the pioneers charge a really good daily rate, and that's quite a, not a step down, but I think it's a brave decision to do something like that when that is not luxury where you have to hold the tap down. But I think they kind of trusted that their consumers would kind of see that as a good thing and almost worth paying more for because they were conserving the water. So I thought that was quite interesting how they as pioneers did that and sold the business for over $100 million. So it can't have affected them too badly.
Do either of you have either on your website a page dedicated to this, or at some sort of reading on the guest journey about stewardship or sustainability or anything like that?
We don't on our currents. Yeah, it's in the works right now. So with our new site we're launching, hopefully here in 2 weeks, fingers crossed, it comes together and goes live. It will have a full page on stewardship, on the different elements that we are contributing toward and that we are mindful of. Because it is also part of Open Sky a little bit too, is being fully off grid. We just had to go down that route. If I had the choice of having power, I would have power. But
is there any parts of the off grid setup that kind of does reduce the level of luxury that you would like to provide, Bygnal?
We not necessarily, just because we've invested so heavily into it. But I mean, the biggest element is really comes down to the power. I mean, just having power, that is, when the guests expect it and the power goes off for 5 minutes, it's a big problem. It's like, even though they're glamping, they're in a tent, they're in the wilderness, if power goes out, it's a problem. And so you better make sure you get power back on within 5 minutes, or you're compensating guests, or you're taking care of them, or trying to figure out how to make their stay better.
Any horror stories?
Oh yeah. So this is when we had our first three units. We actually just hit a full generator at that point because we didn't have power. And there was one night where the generators quit working. And so between me and a couple of my other friends were trying to work on it. Then the guests were in the units. And I was still learning at this point. This is the first time it happened. Didn't know what to really do in this situation. And it got so hot that night that they were up there just kind of sweating it out. And finally, I went up there and it's like, hey, we can't get the generator back on. And I'm like, well, I've been great if you told us 4 hours ago. I'm like, but I thought I could get it back on. I did not know it wasn't going to fire back up. So they sweat it out for the night. And then there's been several times now where it's gone off at 1 o'clock in the morning. We're up there, hook up our backup generator, which is a little smaller one, and we go turn off all the extra power we don't need, and we're sitting there babysit it, and like we'll be up, we'll pull all-nighters at least 3 or 4 times a year just trying to make sure power's on. And it's just what it is.
Blake, I don't know whether you know this about Bygnal yet, but Connor and I have realised this after interviewing him 3 times. He is the unluckiest man you'll ever meet. Nothing seems to go right. Well, the other word I should say is he's very resilient as well, and he finds a way to get through it.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say. That means he's got fortitude. Yeah. Do y'all ever, Bignell, do you ever consider just having certain times when the power's just off and that's just communicated to guests?
I don't think they would go for it.
Yeah.
It's actually an interesting thought. I don't know. I think everybody loves their AC too much and being comfortable.
It'd be an interesting time actually to pivot that, because you both operate in locations with very hot summers, where it gets well over 100 degrees. I don't know, a third or half the days in the summer. And I would just be curious to hear, I guess, one, if you had to do it again, now that you've both have been operating for several years, if you were to redo your site, would you have done anything differently from the AC? And then, what solutions or lessons learned have you come up with, operating in a hot summer?
I'll go first. We actually had one unit that the AC went kaput and we had to replace it. And so we replaced it with a much larger unit to see how much of a difference that it makes. And it made a pretty big difference. And so that's one thing I wish I would have done differently. I think it's a 30,000 BTU, whatever it's almost the largest like mini split system you can get. And it makes a huge difference in the room, both heating and cooling. But if I'm talking to myself 6 years ago, you're on a budget. You don't have the luxury of just getting, a unit that's twice as expensive and then, multiplying that times 15 rooms. It's just not, you got to make your decisions. But over time, we'll probably upgrade the units to larger ones. That's one. Two would be, I think Bignell, y'all have the insulated canvas on your tents.
We do, and it makes a dramatic difference.
Yeah, we don't. And I'm not sure what the cost difference was for that. I can't remember, but that would make, I think, a pretty big difference. However, we don't want it to be like 74 degrees in the tent like all the time. Like that's not really what being exposed to nature is about. And at a certain level, it doesn't really matter how cool or comfortable it is inside. If it's still really hot outside, people just don't want to go to your area. It doesn't matter. Like they'll want to go to a tent and sit inside and not do anything, like not go outside, not do anything. And when it's 100 and 110, last summer we had like 75 days of 100 plus temperatures, including like 58 in a row, I think. But this summer we've only had like 25. So it can, and 95 is significantly different than 105. So it just depends on the year. And then other things we do is we prepare guests for it. We have a little note on the website that the tents are tents. They're not supposed to stay completely comfortable, and they will vary during extreme, heat and cold. And then if it's extremely hot or cold, we'll do phone calls to all our arriving guests for the week and just prepare them. Like you might want to make plans between 1 and 7 to go to wineries, go to town, have dinner, like just be out, away from the property. And then we've added, like a cold plunge package where we will come and bring like bags of ice and like some cool drinks. And people kind of get through that in their bathtub, in their tent. Just things that we can do to accommodate. But just even simple things like offering a free drink when they get there. Like, hey, it's super hot out. Like, go ahead and pick out a drink in our store. Anything you want's on the house. Little things like that make a huge difference with the way the customer remembers that experience.
Are you ever like discounting when it's really like, if you're looking at the forecast and it's all 105, 110 in Austin and you don't have a lot of rooms booked, are you trying to fill the rooms and discount it? Or is it like, hey, this isn't even really worth it for us because they're likely to have a not so great experience? Like, how do you navigate that?
We discount rooms some, but if you discount rooms too much, then the perception from the public is that it's not a very good quality experience anyway. There's a lower limit to like your price, and even though you'd like, oh, well, I'll put rooms up for $99 a night. Like no one is going to think it's luxury. They're going to be like, well, this can't be very nice. There's just no way. And so, And, we're not a commodity product. It's a unique experience. It's a unique property. It's kind of one of a kind. I think Bygnal would say the same. Like so you don't want to discount the value of your brand too much. Otherwise, it won't really make a difference in the end anyway. And you may get a lot of guests who, just show up unprepared, not the right type of guest anyway. But like last summer, we had, I don't know, 6 or 7 people who were emailed, were called, were prepared that it was really hot. They got there and they were like, I can't do this. And they left.
Have you ever had either of you push back on your prices being too high? And I say that because, again, I mentioned Callum, my old business partner. He had a Facebook storm descend upon his glamping site when they were charging, I think it was £250, and like he just got hammered for it basically. And he was like, well, we're selling a luxury product, like, but they kind of just had to kind of ride it through. But have you guys ever had any pushback from having too high of a price, in some people's eyes?
I mean, I think for us, there's definitely been some folks that are like, hey, yeah, this is definitely kind of pushing our budget when we want to come experience. But once they actually come stay and they get through the experience, they leave 99% of the time exceptionally happy, feel like they got their values worth. And so they're like, yeah, we're going to come back again. It was worth every single penny. So it's really just making sure you get your target audience correct. I think it's from the beginning as far as remarketing. If you get that right target audience and they see the value and that's how they look at it, I don't think they're really going to question it as much.
Maybe it's a British thing.
Yeah, I would agree. We've never had any sort of public, price shaming
Yeah.
experience like that. But and I would say anyone who's actually come to the property and stayed there, maybe there's like 1 or 2 in the history of our operation that are like extremely dissatisfied. But I think they're the fact people who are like just looking to get their money back because that's just kind of how they are. We've had people ask, like, do you offer discounts for teachers or military, or, this is out of our budget. We say, well, can you come on a weekday, a Monday or a Tuesday, price is going to be significantly lower than on a weekend. So yeah, that's kind of how we navigate that. But, we're not going to be for everybody, for sure.
And then Nick, if they're on Facebook being Facebook warriors, they're probably not your right target audience anymore.
Yeah.
It brings out the trolls, man. Facebook brings out the trolls.
Right, so it's always a Facebook group when the neighbours are in uproar about a development as well, isn't it? It's,
Yeah, too much time on their hands. Blake, you brought up a really interesting point, and that is just brand integrity in terms of pricing and not wanting to devalue your brand. I remember seeing Getaway consistently, at least maybe 6 months ago, like offering really significant discounts, like 30 to 40% off promotions. And I remember like the first thing I thought, maybe it's as a consumer, or maybe it's just because I work in the industry, but I was like, oh, they must not be doing very well. If they're offering like that type of significant discounts. I think their model is very different than both of yours, very different experiential level. But do you guys have a firm stance on promotions, discounts, how we're not going to go below this price? Or I guess, Blake, you've mentioned it a little bit, but is there anything else you'd want to add? And then, Bygnal, curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, we run promotions seasonally, but it's just to our kind of VIP people who sign up for email or past guests. So it's not something that we just throw out there. We don't put it on the website. We don't put it on, Instagram or something. And we can run promotions because it's not as busy, or just, it's kind of the start of a new season, for fall or spring. Or we might do discounts where, you book multiple nights, you get a pretty significant rate cut, by booking 2 or more nights. There's a really interesting though, like case study though about, Warby Parker, sunglass or eyeglass maker, and how they were trying to, basically come in and be like a value eyeglass, competitor to like Ray-Ban and all these $600, $700 eyeglasses. And they were like, look, it only cost us $30 to make it. We'll sell it for $100. And they were like, their professor at the time when they were in school, they were like, no one is going to believe that they could be the same quality for $100. You just can't. And so if our prices are the same as the Best Western, then why wouldn't they just stay at the Best Western? But that's obviously not what Walden is, and that's not the experience. And like I said, we've had very, very few guests, if any, who once they stayed there didn't feel like they got value for their stay. And if anything, it's like, I can't believe it wasn't more.
Yeah, that Ray-Ban example, I think it's kind of a, I studied a bit of economics at school, and it's basically a known principle is that there's a certain type of a good or service. I think it's called a Veblen good or something, where basically if the price rises, the demand rises, which is obviously inverse to what you'd expect, and it's just because the value in the eyes of the consumer goes up. So yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, for us, we've really haven't really done much promotions or really any discounts because we really haven't needed to. And from the brand perspective, we wanted to just be that high-end luxury accommodation in Zion National Park. And most luxury properties don't really discount. Like if you can afford to come stay there, you can afford to stay there. And a lot of times we've actually had the questions like people talk about, well, if we just drop our prices because like we're slow for a period of time. I've been reading some different things, and one of the thoughts is like, well, why not just raise your prices instead of lowering your prices and see what that happens? I mean, the inverse could happen too. Like if you raise your prices, all of a sudden it may book up. You just don't really know until you test things out and try it. So every year we've really just pushed our prices up every year till we kind of start finding that equilibrium between ADR and our occupancy. Because you actually will make more money with a higher ADR and less occupancy, finding that balance and that threshold. So we've just really tried to focus on that. Where we've been still learning is some of the off seasons. Like, okay, do we bring our rates down a little bit just to kind of reflect those off seasons? So, for example, we're starting to realize summers, even though all the tents are air conditioned, they're very comfortable. Guests still associate a tent and the heat as a not very comfortable place to go stay. So even though, say, Zion National Park, the 3 busiest months is June, July, and August. Those are actually some of our slower months. Not really slower, but they're not our peak months. And so it's been interesting seeing that correlation through there. So spring and fall are our busiest months.
I try to tell a lot of our customers at Sage, who are launching their products, and that is, you might get the insulated tent, pay extra for that, and you might pay extra for a really big AC unit. But like the reality is, if you're looking at the forecast in Zion, it's 105 degrees, and you see a tent, you're going to be turned off by that most likely, and you're going to get worried, and it's just going to be maybe a little bit too risky for your comfort level. And I try to emphasize that to people, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, and a lot of people want to use year-round tents in the winter and have the same. And it's actually more often in the winter. They're like, oh, we'll do, wood-fired furnaces and we'll do the insulated tent. But again, the reality is people are just going to look at a canvas-based unit and say, if it's snowing outside or it's 35 degrees, like they're just not going to do it, even if you can maintain a heated unit. Just perception.
I presume there's maybe a way around that. Bygnal, last time you came on the pod, you mentioned how the most visited or the most time spent, the page with the most time spent on it on your website by visitors is the reviews page, right? And I don't know, maybe you highlight a review that has, in the summer, it's like, hey, we stayed here when it was 110 degrees, it was perfect, or something like that. I don't know, right. Throwing ideas around, but
absolutely.
Presumably there are ways to counter it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where we're just slowly getting the message out there in the language that as our location, we might not be the same as everybody else, but yes, here you will be comfortable, you'll be okay even during those hot months. And so same with the winter. So we're actually going to be opened up this winter, all winter for our first time. We've kind of tested it going into January, 1st of January, and starting back up into February. So we think we've got enough figured out the last couple of years that we should be able to get through the winter now and be okay. So we're definitely down for a new adventure.
I'm curious to see how that goes. We just had some good chats about rates, ADR. I would be curious, have either of you played around with scarcity, which might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but there was a property in the gorge near Oregon, and it's called Tenzin Hot Springs, and it was really cool. It only has 8 really cool, unique units that have hot springs in them. But when they were launching, they built a lot of hype, and then they would only open their availability for the calendar 2 months or 3 months in advance. And I think sometimes they would even have midweek open. So it'd be like Thursday to Sunday. and they built a really big email list and following, and then they would release the calendar only 2 months in advance. So there's very low availability. Like I was on the email list every single time I checked the calendar, there'd be like, a couple availabilities. And so that got me just to start like purchasing right away, because I was like, oh, I don't, this is the only thing that's available. I better get it now. And I walk a lot of our customers through that, be like, hey, this is a really good strategy for when you're opening is having less availability. I'm just wondering if you guys have played around with maybe even just blocking off nights in the calendar, even if they are availability, just to like build perception and scarcity.
We've not experimented with that. I do agree it can be a good way to launch and build momentum and like a following. Like it gets people's attention to say, well, I really got to be on my game if I'm going to find an available room. But I'd be concerned if long term is that really doing you any favors. People just be like, oh, I can never get this place. I'm just not going to go. Number one, and two, on the financial side, you may be turning away a lot of reservations you otherwise would have gotten, if there is no availability. So, but as long as if you can track, whatever your conversion rate is, your sales funnel, and if that's at a relatively high level, then I'd say go for it. But that's like the key metric to know is how many customers are you actually converting? Yeah.
I wonder if there's an algorithm, and it depends on your booking reservation software, but there is one where it will show if you have 15 units, it will show them all in a row, and you can scroll through like a 2-week period in the calendar, and it will just show what's booked and what's not. And it would be, especially if most of your units are the same, I wonder if there would ever be an algorithm you could use in the booking software where it's like, hey, randomly keep the calendar at 65% occupancy. And it's just always showing that. And obviously if it's more than that, it would show more than that, but that would be kind of fascinating from a booking perspective.
I think hotels do that. When you jump on like Priceline or like even Expedia, will say, okay, like this has 2 rooms left. I mean, so they do it in a different form or fashion.
No, there's some psychology for sure around it to get people to be like, oh man, there's only 1 room left. Like there's probably not. There's probably a lot.
0%.
But I would say, but I would say anyone who is trying to make a decision around what their booking platform is going to be, little features like that, I think could be really important as far as driving consumer behavior to actually book. Our system does not. It does it when it gets down to like 2, but you can't teach it. You can't have it like game the system a little bit, like what you're talking about.
So I want to pull back a little bit to the first answer you gave, Blake, actually on when you're talking about nature and glamping. You said that kind of you didn't necessarily start off with the intention of this just being purely a vehicle for enjoying nature, but kind of based on what the guests were doing on site, you kind of just focus more on that side of things and adjusted. And I know, Bygnal, you've spoken as well about how you've very much kind of adjusted the guest experience based on how they react and what their feedback is. And I'd be interested to know, Blake, what kind of you saw in those early days that moved you over to focusing more on nature and really kind of making that the core aspect of the experience.
Well, one of the first things we did was we had, and we still to this day have guest books in every room. And so the first edition of Walden was just 2 rooms. I ran it myself and I cleaned all the rooms. And if I had time in between turns, I would sit down and read what they said. And I would just be like, okay, that's great to know how they spent their time, what they liked, what they didn't like. And it was always about like, I didn't know how much I needed this till I got here. Just like really grand things that, we weren't expecting people to share with us in a guest book that, someone else could read, but they did. And it was just immediate, kind of confirmation that what we were offering was something that people really wanted more than they knew, and was really helpful in kind of making sure that didn't change with, even though the property grew and expanded.
And Bygnal, you're big on guest feedback, right?
Oh, big time. I mean, it's one of the biggest things. You got to keep a pulse on how your guests doing every single day because it can change. I mean, so for us, it is important. So I would love to do the guest book idea. We have not done that yet, but we do have like little notepads in all the rooms on the tables. And just like with Blake, guests 9 times out of 10 will write a note, little thank you or something they enjoyed their stay or this or that on the notes. And the housekeeping team has actually taken all those, and we have a big wall down in the laundry department. And there's a full wall now of these notepads, stickies from all the guests and their feedback. And then just kind of during our checkout process, we always want to ask them, like, how was their stay? What could we have done better? And that individual will then put into our just kind of company-wide Slack channel. So we're kind of instantly kind of getting a pulse on where things at. And so if we weren't happy, we can instantly go take care of it right then while they're there. So we try to catch it before they leave.
One thing I really wanted to talk about on this episode is, so you both, Blake, you started with 2 units. Bygnal, you started with 3, right? In your
Yes.
phase 1?
Yep.
And then Bygnal, you went to like 12 in your phase 2, was it?
Went to 10, so we added 7 more, so we went to 10. And then we added 3 more, so we're at 13 right now.
And then Blake, you went from 2 to 15 in your phase 2?
That's right, yeah.
And then, and both of you in your phase 3, Blake, I think you added an event center and maybe a more of a grab-and-go store or a store of some kind. And then I forget if I think there wasn't any F&B and no prepared meals. And then Bygnal, you went with a dining experience and like F&B. And I guess I would just be curious, Blake, maybe we could start with you just as far as, walk us through your decision-making as far as deciding to prioritize an event space rather than dining, and maybe what you've learned from that choice and that journey. And then maybe Bygnal, you could walk us through prioritizing dining instead of an event space, and if that's on the radar for you, because certainly a really big choice for a lot of listeners is a lot of people are considering both of those. There's pros and cons to both, so it'd be helpful to dive into that a little bit.
We actually added the event space and the lobby and everything in our second phase along with the room, so it all happened at once. But the decision to do that was because, I guess the decision to do that instead of a restaurant or F&B was one, the labor availability in our area is really challenging. So restaurants require a lot of labor, and I knew it was going to be hard to hire. 2, from the very beginning, we wanted to create kind of still like an authentic camping experience. So having guests prepare food in room is really important to us, and making it really easy for them to do that, but still like sitting down like with a loved one and just cooking a really simple meal is a great environment for conversation. And again, kind of honing back into like, that's the kind of camping experience that we all remember as kids. So we didn't want to remove that by having an on-site restaurant. 3, a restaurant is a complex operation. And 4, we would not be able to have an open to the broader public. The way our road is and the access to our property is pretty small, and it goes through a private easement with some other landowners. And so having it be like a restaurant that's open to the public, I think that would have been the only way to do it, because 15 rooms, I mean, we just never would have had the volume of customers for like a chef to actually like make a living. So with our occupancy where we are, so those were kind of the decisions why. And then, but we knew that the property would be extremely unique, and having weddings and large corporate events and having, be like a really unique venue was something that we could do. You're going to capture a lot more revenue in a one-time kind of event setting. And then during the week, trying to increase weekday occupancy by allowing companies and corporate offsite meetings to happen there. And so I wouldn't say it was like calculus, like it wasn't on a spreadsheet. It was just more of a feel, like restaurant seems complicated. We're not going to be able to, do enough business to keep it busy and have it make any money. So instead we kind of complement. We have meal packages people can buy, and it's in their room with, various grocery items that they can cook in the room. And so in that way, we're just kind of still blending. It's convenient, but you're still, part of the experience, and things aren't necessarily going to be done for you.
Did you change the experience for corporate guests compared to, for want of a better word, normal guests?
And in what way?
So if you have, if the site's booked out by a corporate retreat, do you do anything differently? Like, did you give them the exact same arrival experience and stay experience as your standard guest, or do you kind of have to adapt it a little bit because it's a a corporate company's booked it out for the week?
It depends on the client and what they want. We give them the freedom, like, hey, we can send text messages to all the guests ahead of time. We can customize it, and that's kind of a neat feature. We've done like gift baskets, and we've set the room a little bit differently for them. Um, and then any sort of event we do, the venue has a catering kind of kitchen, and so we'll bring in, or the client will bring in a catering company to provide all the meals, in our event hall.
Could you walk us through, Blake, a little bit about your events business, how that's been going? Are you 2 years in with that? Just like
Yeah.
challenges, lessons learned. Has it been a good choice?
Yeah, we're 2 years in. Lessons learned, it's competitive. Um, there are a lot of different wedding venues that people can choose from. Um, Not having, catering available on site puts us at a slight disadvantage. But again, it's really not something that would make, financial sense for us to do at our size. If we expand the property, have more rooms, then it becomes, a different conversation. Um, the event hall requires a lot of upkeep and maintenance, even just to sit there idle during the week, like keeping the air. We learn like running the air conditioner at 74 degrees doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is. And so we have it cranked up to 80 when no one's in there, at least. Um, and, we used to allow guests to go in there and just use it, like guests who were staying there. But we had dogs like poop on the floor, and they would just like not take care of it. And they would, just kind of trash it. And then we didn't know it was dirty. And then we would show it and it's dirty. And then it also just didn't feel like it was exclusive. And so guests who come there, we get a chance to say, hey, like, this is our event lodge. We rent it out for weddings, family reunions, dinner parties, stuff like that. And it becomes like something people can kind of be like, oh, that's cool. Maybe we could do a party here someday. And they'll go and look at it, but they can't go in. It's off, like we'll give them a tour, but it's not a space that's available to them. Because then we had guests who would come back and be like, well, why do I have to rent the lodge? I was in there last time I was here. And be like, well, just because you go to like some, W hotel doesn't mean you can go in the banquet hall and use it and like have friends in there. And so that was like something I never would have thought of, people kind of complaining about having to pay a rental fee for this giant, expensive building that we designed and built. They just kind of thought it was kind of came with the property. And so not giving things away, I guess, is a lesson there. But weddings are very lucrative, and we operate them. We're the venue. We require a wedding planner. We're not in the day-to-day operation of a wedding, and never will be. And that's normal. That's standard. But it does, brides and grooms, they require a lot of care. There's a lot of questions, a lot of emotions and personalities. And even though you're like, hey, we're just the venue, we're just the hotel, the staff have to be ready to accommodate, abnormal requests when people are staying there because they want everything to be perfect. So,
Have you got any abnormal requests that you can share?
we've had some pretty unique weddings. We had one that was an Indian guy, Indian American, and an American woman, and it was like a 3-day event. And they had him like riding a white horse around the property with like tons of loud music, and they were throwing flowers everywhere. And the neighbors were like, "What is that music? When is it going to turn off?" And it just the production of that wedding was really involved and intricate. And like, we didn't run it, but like we were there, and we had to have like, yes, you can do this, no, you can do that, you can't do that. And so, that's one thing. And then just the emotions and the personalities of like the bride and groom's family when they're there can be, delicate, I would say. Some people can be like, why are we out here? What in the world were they thinking? Why did they book this place? And they're just complaining about, this property that we think is pretty cool and unique. And they're just like totally trashing it. And it's like, well, obviously there's something going on between them, and this is just kind of the manifestation of it. So I don't know. There's a couple things that come to mind.
I'd be curious. I oftentimes when I talk with customers who are wanting to add an events venue and asking us if it's a good idea, I usually just totally oversimplify it. I'm like, oh, if you add a space and you build a relationship with the top 3 to 5 wedding planners, and then you just kind of go hands off from there, like easy money, right? And I think Blake, you and I had a chat maybe a year ago about it, and it sounded like it certainly wasn't as easy as that. And I would think that your property would be an absolutely just killer, super special, very desirable wedding that like you wouldn't have to do a lot of work and people would just be lining up. But I know in our conversations, it hasn't always been that easy, or there's a lot of competition, I guess. How's it been as far as marketing and advertising that and getting your return on investment for that build, or like lessons learned on getting it booked up?
So I do think it's worth it. I mean, we've been really fortunate to have some really amazing clients from very high-end companies. We've had Aston Martin, Virgin Galactic, Campari, Long Branch Bourbon, all rent the space multiple times, want to come back and do other events. So that's a relationship that we're really proud and happy to have fostered. Um, but it took a year of just kind of groundwork really to establish that. And then also, like, the venue has to be attractive. It has to look great. It has to look unique. It really has to stand out. So having a barn somewhere is not going to cut it. I mean, I think most people realize that, but the product itself has to be very compelling. But other things to think about are, where, for a wedding especially, where are the friends of the wedding going to stay? Like, if we only have 15 rooms, they can't all stay on the property. Where are they going to stay? And just what kind of hotels are around? We've had some feedback from people in Austin. There's like, well, we're in Austin. All our friends are in Austin. We don't want to pay to have to come stay out there. We'd rather just come out there, have the wedding, and leave. But we require the whole property to be booked out for a wedding, because there's going to be a lot of traffic, a lot of noise. That if we had other guests on the property, they would be like, look, I came here to like get away, and now there's all this commotion from this wedding, and there's no feasible way to like tell them that when they're making the reservation online, that, hey, there's going to be a wedding here, so just a heads up. So those are kind of things to think about. And then also just yeah, what are the catering relationships like? You're going to quote a ton of people, and they're just a bunch of people who just got engaged. They don't know anything what a wedding costs maybe, and but the venue is going to be the number one or first choice likely. Where are we getting married? Maybe when, and then where. And so I think just knowing that there's going to be a ton of tire kickers, so to speak, like people just filling out your inquiry just to know, like, how much does this cost? And then, but if you can get them to tour the property and your property is compelling and unique, like, I think you're going to have a pretty good chance at converting them. And so we do as many tours as we can, because we know the property will really sell itself once they come there.
Hi, friends. This is your host, Connor Schwab at Sage Outdoor Advisory. If you're launching an outdoor hospitality project like glamping, we can help. We offer feasibility studies and appraisals. What that means is we look at your specific market and proposed business offering and complete an in-depth analysis and financial projections to make sure that your planned business will be profitable. Getting a second opinion on your proposal and forecasted financials is critical to understand before you spend years of your time and hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is particularly important if you are looking to raise money for your project from a bank or private investors. They are going to want to see this type of in-depth analysis from an independent third-party specialist in the industry. We have completed over 250 feasibility studies and appraisals in outdoor hospitality in the U.S. in the last 4 years. So we understand what it takes to bring a project from concept to reality. If this sounds like it could be helpful to you, you can go to our website, sageoutdooradvisory.com, and you can schedule a complimentary consultation with our team. Thanks. Now back to the show.
Could you maybe walk me through a little bit, like, how you manage your booking calendar with weddings and events? I'm sure it might, obviously weddings typically book out 9 to 18 months in advance, so that's probably not an issue. But I guess first off, how many months in advance is your normal booking calendar open? And then how do you do that dance with availability for booking the entire property for corporate retreats and weddings? And then the second part would be, what does the property make when it's fully booked for an event versus fully booked by just independent customers? And is that a big difference? Like, is it highly worth it for you guys to be booking it as an event space?
That's a very good questions. The first one, how far is our calendar out? 6 months are available. People can book 6 months in advance. Most weddings are going to be 18 months sometimes. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I'm kind of like, just hurry up and get married, but yeah, crazy lead times for weddings. So we're not really concerned about, there being a conflict there. Corporate events are a little bit shorter term, or shorter lead time. It could be like 1 to 2 months, but they're most likely going to fall on a weekday. We're not really all that busy during a lot of times of the year, during, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, for example. And so, but as soon as we get an inquiry in, we'll put a block on the calendar, and then we'll set, like, it'll release automatically within like a week. So we tell people to, we can hold these rooms for a week, and then it's gonna fall off, and that helps incentivize at least a decision, one way or the other, yes or no. And then what does the property make? We'll do like, $15,000 on a weekend, Friday, Saturday night, with the property fully booked out. But then our venue will generate another 10 to 12 grand for the venue itself. But it is important to know that there will presumably be a discount in the room rate for the whole, if someone books a wedding, they kind of expect somewhat of a discount for the rooms. And then compared to what you could maybe get on the transient market, with having everyone just, the public kind of booking the room. So doing some math around how much of a discount are you willing to offer? Does the venue generate that, upside in return, offsetting any sort of discount you're offering? But also, the other thing is also, a wedding is going to attract tons of people to come to the property who are then going to come back and stay there. So you have to think beyond just like the numbers of the people staying there. It's kind of an indirect marketing tool by getting people to the property, and really, kind of winning them over as a future customer can be huge. The other thing to think about, and we're going to experiment with this next year, we are going to have a wedding on the property with having other guests stay in the property who are not related to the wedding. But it's during the slow season. We're only going to rent certain rooms that are far enough away from the venue where they're really not going to have, interaction or any sort of noise from it. And then you manage your policies. When does the wedding stop? When does the music stop? Do you allow music outside or not? All that kind of stuff. So you can accommodate, two different events happening at the same time, during the slow season.
I know for a fact I'd be trying to sneak into that wedding if I was if I was saying that. So I'd be like, if it's an open bar, I am there.
That would be interesting contingent for your people. It's like, well, if you're not going to book all the rooms for your wedding, then other guests on the property can go to the wedding and give a toast.
Yeah, maybe we need wristbands for all wedding guests, so we know anyone's not wearing a wristband. Yeah.
Thanks so much for your patience as we dive into this, because I think it's such an important conversation that I get asked about all the time. It's super interesting. And Blake, talking about Acton case study, I do imagine if someone's booking a wedding 12 months in advance, they have to put a deposit down that's probably fairly significant. So that's probably pretty good for the cash flow of the business if you're taking, I don't know, $3,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is, 12 months in advance, and that frees up the cash in the business.
And it's non-refundable, and that's industry standard. It's 50% down, non-refundable. So that's a great commitment that we get from them on that. Yeah,
that's huge for any operator. To get 10, 15 grand in your cash account for your business 12 months in advance, that's just huge.
I think there's a lot of people who definitely considering the event and wedding component. I know a few, so that'll be really useful for them. Moving subjects a little bit, you both started as founder operators of a pretty small scale glamping site that has since expanded, and presumably at some point you went from being that person that was constantly in the weeds wearing a million hats to a people manager, really. I'd be interested to know, starting with you, Bygnal, what your team looks like on the ground, and at what point you made that leap a little bit from being the guy to kind of being the overseers of everybody else, and kind of what that process looked like a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think before I jump into that, though, I want to backtrack just a little bit, though, and kind of talk about kind of differences between where Walden Retreats went with the event side and how Open Sky went kind of more with the food and beverage side. And so, Blake, I actually really loved hearing all the stories about the event side because we've dabbled in it just a tiny bit, and it's been something where we've kind of just pulled back until we're actually ready to commit to something like that. Because there's a lot goes into it, and it's from the high level surface, like you said, Connor. It looks easy. Yeah, just go show up in the event building. Good, there you go. They show up and they leave, and it's a lot more difficult than that. Trying to balance all the guests and accommodations, and so that's one thing we really ran into is when it come to a buyout or come stay, but with 13 accommodations, like that's never enough to accommodate the most of the different events. And so like, where do they stay? So anyway, it's just been very fascinating to hear your side of the story on that because I've always been very intrigued with it.
Ooh, could I do one interjection? Both of you guys are in markets where there, if there ever was a saturated glamping market, they might say Zion or Austin are probably two of the top five with developments. And, Blake, what would be really interesting, particularly with yours, is there any other glamping businesses within 30 minutes of you that you could have a relationship with where it's like, hey, if we book a wedding venue and we don't have enough tents to host people, can we send them to you for a kickback? Or if you have a wedding venue, you do the same thing for us. Is that on your radar? Has that come up?
Not with any like glamping business, but we have relationships. We've developed relationships with other hotels for room blocks, and kind of referral business. There's one that's 15 minutes from us, and it's like 80 keys. It's pretty new. It's decently nice. I mean, it's an upgrade from like your standard kind of small town hotel, but they have a winery and a restaurant, and it's a great, kind of solution to where does everybody else stay. It's a 15-minute drive. It's real simple and easy. But most of the guests for the wedding are not looking for like a glamping, accommodation. And that's like the bride and the groom. Like that's what they want, and that's what they want their family to have, because they get to rent the property for Friday and Saturday night and spend, 2 days, 48 hours at least with their friends and family and connect beyond just like the event itself. And so that's kind of one of the main selling points is you get to stay here with your friends and family and catch up because most likely, people live all over the country or the world for that matter. So, but it's a good point. I mean, there's a growing, glamping development. There's Outdoorsy now has a property about 20 minutes from us. I know Onera just opened their Wimberley property. There's Utopian, which is also like 30 minutes away from us. So there are other accommodations if people are really looking for that, but most of the time they're looking for a more traditional solution.
Can I get back to my question now?
No.
I was going to say, Connor, who started this podcast?
Who started? It's ours now.
Connor's taking over, Nick.
Well, I'd say I'd dock his pay, but I don't pay him anything, so
it's hard to fire free help.
Maybe you get edit permissions, Nick. You can just edit.
Right, Bygnal, you better answer the question this time.
All right.
So tell me what your staffing looks like on the ground, and at what point you made that bit of a leap from being the guy in the weeds constantly to overseeing people.
Yeah, so part of our journey a little bit is we had to really bootstrap, just kind of like Blake and everybody else in this industry as we kind of got started. And when we got our round of funding for our second phase, it was enough to get started, but once we got into it, we were cash strapped, and so I had to keep the team really small. So just like Blake, I was doing as much as I could. I was being the developer, general contractor, general manager, housekeeper, sales agent. I mean, whatever it took to get it done. And by keeping the team really small, I was able to kind of pull out of the hole a little bit with just all the cost overruns on the construction side, and I just had to do it. There was just no other way. But I eventually got forced to the point of collapse, and that's when you realize, like, okay, you got to make a decision here. Either you've got to bring somebody else into cart that you can trust, even though it's your baby and you've put your life, blood, and sweat and tears into it. There's a lot of responsibility to make sure this goes right. Or you kind of collapsing, and then everything kind of goes astray at that point. So I got pushed into that position. And I actually ended up hiring a recruiting company because I did not have the time, honestly, to go out and recruit and find a individual. So to me, it was worth trying to take the chances a little bit and kind of reduce some of the risk of finding that right person. And I got super lucky. So within like the fifth interview that these folks were able to bring to me, he was able to hire him on, and within 2 weeks he started, and it's been the best decision I've ever made, and it's my general manager. So that was actually just a little over a year ago. So it was actually March of 2023 is when that actually finally happened. And so since then, the company and just the systems, the processes have all just come alive. And it's just been really cool. So since then, we've been able to build out the general manager. We brought on a really good, robust front desk teams now. Got a front desk manager, great housekeeping department, great housekeeping manager, sales and marketing. And then the other side of that is really the restaurant. And like to Blake said, there was a lot of struggles with the restaurant, and even still trying to get it to a profitable position when you only have 13 accommodations. For us, we always kind of had the idea of doing a restaurant because we didn't know if it really would make sense. So we built our first 3 original camps without kitchens, even though like Blake went kind of different direction with that. And so with those 3 without kitchens, it kind of made it really hard very quickly on how to take care of guests with their food. And so there was not a whole lot of restaurants around the area. And so it kind of became a sticky point really quickly. And that's kind of what forced me to kind of down that direction. I'm happy we went that way. It's been a long, hard bootstrapping process. We started out of a food trailer. We backed up a food trailer, and we built like a wood panel wall surrounding it. And we backed up the back door right into our little makeshift lobby unit that we made, and we put 2 tables in there, and that was our restaurant. And so was able to find the chef off Indeed. It's actually kind of a funny story. We was looking for a chef, and my sales and marketing individual is helping me kind of find somebody, and she kept emailing him through Indeed, and it's like, hey, like, we're looking for a chef. And some reason the text or the emails kept sent over to him was a housekeeping job. And finally got so sick of it, he's like, lady, like, listen to me, I'm a chef. I'm not going to come work for you to do housekeeping. So like, pretty much mess off. And finally, when he did that, she's like, no, I'm looking for an actual chef. And he's like, oh, okay, we can talk now. So that's kind of how we found him. And he's been phenomenal to actually come up here, and it's been his life and his soul to really invest it into that restaurant. So without our chef and our general manager, Open Sky would not be where it's at today. And I have grown a lot being able to let go and trust these folks to really take care of our guests.
Your GM, that's Wes, right?
Yes, Wes. Yep.
Would you say he had a different skill set to you when you hired him? And was that part of the reason why?
So we actually had a lot of similarities, but there's also some other skill sets that he had. So with him, he is very structured, very organized. He is very on top of things. And so I'm kind of that same way too. So I really appreciated that about him. The second thing is his skill sets is he is really exceptional at creating systems and creating processes and creating structure for the entire team to build on. Because I didn't have any other place. I didn't have time. It was putting out one fire after the other. So with him, that was his skill set, and that's what the company needed, and he has excelled at it tremendously.
Yeah, I wanted to take a step back at both of your guys' choices with the question of prioritizing F&B versus events, and Blake's priority of wanting to have an experience like you camped growing up and giving guests the opportunity to have that connection and cook a slow meal, as well as not having enough units to have a full kitchen, and why you prioritize that. And then Bygnal, you're 10 minutes from town, so you can probably hire a little bit easier, although I'm sure it's still a challenge, but you can get there's so much traffic on the main road that connects to your road, and it's probably a little bit easier to get outside guests in. So I think the 2 routes that you chose make sense given your geographical area and a little bit about the customer experience you're prioritizing. So that is super interesting. And Bygnal, I think you have a really interesting opportunity because one, your property is so beautiful, the Horseshoe Canyon. It's worth going to. Your price point to stay at your property is out of reach of a lot of people, myself included, being in the $500 to $800. So, but I think guests still want to come experience your property. It's almost an attraction in the area. It could almost be just a place to go see. It's that nice. And I think your restaurant opens the door for outside customers to come experience your property if they couldn't afford a room. And it's like, hey, you can come spend the glamping golden hour, enjoy the Horseshoe Canyon, in this really beautiful setting for an entry point that's closer to $80 to $100 for two people, rather than paying, the $600 to stay at a room. So it's an interesting opportunity.
No, you mean you're spot on, and like we see that every single day. So like most of our restaurant guests, 60% comes from off the property. So like there's really only 30%, maybe, well, actually probably about 25-30% is our guests, 10-15% is locals, and then the rest of it is local travelers. But we do pull a lot of other folks from Auto Camp, White Bison, Wildflower, all do come up here. A lot of the guests do.
Mm-hmm. And presumably same principle as Blake as well, where
Yep.
people who come to the site to eat at the restaurant. In Blake's case, it's go to the wedding event. They'll see it. They'll see how beautiful the property is. They'll see the glamping tents, and they're like, "Well, we'll come back here and we'll pay whatever it is per night." And you've got a customer.
It is. It's great marketing exposure.
Bygnal, have you reached out to any of either the other glamping businesses or the other hotels, or even like local restaurants, or probably not restaurants, but hotels or other glamping businesses, and been like, hey, just so you guys know, we have this food offering. It's a pretty cool special experience. Or maybe it's the travel planners, or the outdoor adventure people. You take someone canyoneering in Zion and then be like, hey, if your guests are looking for a really cool dining experience, we have, open skies dining, fine dining under the stars in a slot canyon. And like, have you partnered with anyone to put your restaurant on the radar of other local operators?
I think the biggest one has actually been Auto Camp, because they're just right down the road, 3.5 miles away from us. So we have a really good working relationship with their general manager, and so they push a lot of folks our way. That probably would be the biggest one, because they don't have a on-site restaurant. They have their grab and go, kind of their quick options. And then we do have a couple other relationships with some folks in Springdale, other restaurants that we kind of refer back and forth to. So we're working on that. But we do have a few. What
does that relationship look like? Are you going and talking to the general manager? Are you saying, hey, we'll give your guests a 10% discount and we'll give you guys a kickback? Or like, is there any granularity to what that looks like or strategy?
No, Connor, we don't do discounts.
I thought he was going to say he doesn't do strategy then.
Okay.
No, so really what it comes down to is just filling a need in the marketplace. That's how it's kind of been positioned. So for Auto Camp, I mean, it kind of just started out as their guests coming up here, just finding on their own and coming back down and telling them about it, to where all of a sudden their front desk agents just started recommending us just out of taking care of their guests. And then that grew into, okay, hey, so Wes, our general manager, he put together this general manager's little, not really a club, but kind of get together every other Friday for coffee. So he's got the Under Canvas general manager, he's got Auto Camp's general manager. So we all kind of get together and hang out and have coffee. And it's been really cool, kind of be able to work off each other that way.
A GM support group. I like it.
Exactly. And it's huge, because you see so many things, you need somebody to go talk to and vent to about all your problems.
Oh yeah, totally. I want to recommend that to Amber. Yeah.
I love it. Nick, not sure if one of the last questions I wanted to ask you guys would be, you guys both have gone through, you both bootstrapped, built a really refined experience, expanded. Selfishly, like Sage, I think played a role in that expansion, but would love to hear, just how your growth and fundraising went, any lessons learned, and then if you guys have any future plans for more expansion and what you would prioritize for that. Would be curious. Maybe Blake, you could kick us off.
Gosh, I mean, the journey for financing is unknowable and long, and kind of up and down in every which way. But my thinking from the beginning was it needs to start small, because one, I don't know if this is going to work. Two, I have to prove myself as an operator, because I'm not coming from some other property or even the hotel world in general. And so I needed a lot of hands-on experience to know how to run the place when it grows, but also to kind of prove myself to investors I'm talking to that like I know how long it takes to clean a room. I know how to do it. I know what cleaning toilets is like. I know everything there is to, going in to run it. and then we had a viable business model when we had the first two rooms. But I knew that if that didn't work out, it would be like, well, we bought this property, we added these two cool cabins to it, and we can sell it, and maybe even make some money on it to someone who wants to own it as like a private ranch. So that was always, I think it's important to have, no matter what stage you're in, like what's your exit plan if things don't go right? What are you going to do with this property? Are you going to liquidate it? Are you going to trash it? Are you going to just hold on? Like, what is your plan? Are you going to convert it into some sort of rehab facility? Like these are some of the answers that I had to come up with going through pitching. Like, what if this doesn't work? What are we going to do with all these things that we built? Getting a few people on board early is just huge. I mean, everyone wants to know, like, well, who's involved? How much money have you raised? And there's a real psychology to momentum that if they're going to look at like, and then you have an advisory board, which is really just like your friends be like, hey, can I use your bio and your picture in my pitch deck? And they'd be like, hey, these guys look like they're smart. They know what they're talking about. They're supporting Blake. He must know what he's doing, and and all this. And so, and I actually use my advisory board for sure. But like, it helps legitimize the business. And the other thing I would say that helped was, Connor, you've heard this before. How you do anything is how you do everything. And the image that you present in a pitch deck better match the type of experience you're going to give your customers, better match the website, better match how clean the rooms are. Like everything has to be done the same, and it has to represent your brand well. And so I thought it was worth taking the extra time to make the pitch deck and all the materials that I put together look nice, look put together, look professional, look like they're thought out. Like this isn't just like some whim of an idea. Like he's really thought this through. Knowing that every venture has extreme volatility and there's a chance it won't work at all. But, at least like we try to minimize that from happening by being very thoughtful and planning it out and laying the picture out for people. But it took 2 years to raise the second round of funding, after we had 2 rooms up. COVID was really like, I mean, strange to say, but was really the event that made this possible. We were extremely busy, because everyone wanted to go somewhere where they didn't have to interact with anyone, and that was kind of exactly what we offered. And so, but even then, it was hard. It took a long time. Talked to a lot of people, got a lot of no's, and also just knowing like there's a mismatch in certain people you talk to, like some family offices or private equity firms. They don't write checks for under $10 million. So there's no point in even having a conversation. And so knowing who your project is a good opportunity for and who it's not, but also knowing that a lot of firms and family offices, like they're looking for deals. Like, this isn't like asking for a donation. Like they're looking for ways to deploy their money to continue providing returns to their pool of investors. So it's something that, one should go into knowing who you're a fit for, who you're not. But then once you establish that, like, make sure you do everything to the T, and, you've got all the answers to the questions. And every time you don't have an answer, go back and revise it and add it, So there's a few thoughts.
I love that. And if I heard you correctly, maybe step one of that is having one or two or like a couple early lead investors who are really excited about, the property or the project. And even in a worst case scenario, there's still value there for them as a resale. And then for the further expansion, one, just understanding and improving your model, and then, really understanding the customer, the business, the operations inside and out. So when you go to the expansion, you have a good, clean pitch with potentially an exit strategy that legitimate investors can get behind and understand and see a return. Is that correct?
Yeah, and for sure.
I can definitely vouch for the early investor requirement. Connor, you and Sherry at Sage are a big help with us, because raising money for Posh, I mean, we don't have real estate to fall back on. We're more of a startup, and that first $200,000 raised in the crowdfunding campaign was really, really tough. And it needed someone like you, kind of like Sherry, and a couple of other people that
and Bygnal, he put money in, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
I believe in you guys.
Blake, damn your house renovation.
I know, not a good time. Not a good time.
Good excuse.
I'm in for the next round in a year or two.
But yeah, that first, it's social proof, isn't it? And people want to see that other people have invested before they do it. And thankfully, we had Connor and Sherry as kind of expert investors early on, and that second 200,000 was a hell of a lot easier. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Bygnal, you've had your own kind of fundraising journey as well, right?
I have. It's gone a little differently than Blake. I wish I would have gone Blake's route. It's a lot more methodical, and actually, I think would have been the better route. I kind of came out
That's
of the
hindsight.
gates.
I'm not saying I knew all that going in. Yeah, so.
Well, whoever's listening, take Blake's route. Do that path to a T, and you'll do just fine. Because that's what I wish I would have done. I went a little differently. I kind of came out of the gate swinging a little bit because I was seeing it working. Like my gut knew it was going to happen. I just went all in. There was no plan B. It was all in or nothing. Is kind of how my approach went, and it was kind of based off of just the growth here in the Zion area. I'm like, if I just do 1 or 2 units, like, how's that going to make sense? Where's it going to give me to? Like, I felt like I was going to kind of miss the boat. Because there was, 5-6 years ago, kind of wonder, is this a fad? Is this a trend? Is it actually going to stay around? Are you going to miss this cycle? Like, there was a lot of these questions. So I was just, to me, it's like, okay, if I put a team together, then we can go do this. So we started out the bat, like, with all my local banks, credit unions, and some of them already had funded other projects in the area. It's like, well, we can't compete with ourselves, so we're not going to lend to you because we already have one down the road. And then from a individual side, trying to raise as far as investor side, I was actually able to get a couple of my close friends on board because they had some extra cash sitting around, and they had a construction company, and they're still my partners today. And that gave me kind of a start. And then we finally found the property, so we got the property under contract and got it secured. And that was one of the catch-22s. Is you take all your cash, lock up in your property. Now you don't have any cash, don't have any liquidity. So now the bank looks at you differently, or another investor. So there's that piece as well. Ultimately, what it came down to me is I found a really good chef in the area. I found a local architect. I found a local management company because I didn't have that experience. And so talk with the lender. Here's all the things you need. Here's all the expertise you need. So I went and tried to build a team around that. And then when it came to the tent canvases, they don't classify those as real property. Like most of them on FF&E. So when you design out your property, okay, you want to ask for an $8 or $9 million loan. Great, what's the collateral? It's not really real estate, it's FF&E. So then I'm like, well, I need to go build a 6,000 or 7,000 square foot lodge, the actual real property, to get this loan. So I went and spent a couple $100,000 designing out a big, beautiful lodge, event space, restaurant, bar, private chef's table, laundry, gorgeous building on paper. Finally got all the bids back, and it was a $9 million building. Well, that doesn't really pencil. So I
hate when that happens.
I know. It's probably my biggest learning curves. It's my deepest, darkest secret is in my closet. There's a roll of plans about this big. We spent a couple $100,000 for it. It just sits there. But it's brutal. It's what you learn, because that's what the bank wanted. Like, that's kind of the path I got led down. And I was 24 at that point, so I just did a couple of fix and flips, and so I was learning as well. So we ended up pitching to probably 30 banks. I went to probably 40 different investors, asking everybody that I knew, getting referrals. And a lot of them were like, that's interesting, that's fascinating. Those are renderings, that's cool. But yeah, there's no proof. And so finally got to the point is we needed a prototype. And so like Blake, he did it right the first time. He went and built 2 units. So we finally ordered 3 units from Africa, got them over here, and that's right when COVID hit. And to the dismay of COVID, it kind of shot the big projects. Every team member that I put together, as far as a partner or a consulting firm or whoever it was, all just kind of bounced like, hey, yeah, this project's dead in the water. There's none of these projects going on. But I was able to took the next risk. We got a hard money loan from my mentor friend of mine from my university, and he's just like, just to let you know, from this day moving forward, I'm not your friend anymore. I am your lender. So if you default, I'm going to take your property and all your stuff. And I'm like, okay, understood. So we put it up, got a hard money loan, and that's how we kind of built our first little phase, put the little infrastructure in, got the first 3 camps opened up April 2021, and kind of tail end of COVID, and people were coming to Zion from California, and it just took off. Like within 3 weeks of opening up, Airbnb kind of was how we kind of started, and the rest is kind of history. So we kind of took that momentum and just kind of started growing from there.
Like, you can see why we always talk about Bygnal as the hardest customer journey of the...
I'm starting to think COVID happened just to derail Bygnal's glamping journey now.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm grateful for it. It got us to where we are today, and me and my 3 other friends, we still own and control Open Sky. So I'm grateful. Like, it's us.
Well, that
Right.
was, I nearly mentioned it halfway through when, Connor, you said how I think it was Getaway were doing their big discount campaign. I think there's a real distinction between the two businesses we got here who are very much still founder operated, and they're still still very much in charge, versus Getaway, AutoCamp, who have VC firms now really breathing down their necks, and it's probably not the owners of AutoCamp and Getaway that are telling them that have decided to do these big discount campaigns. It's probably the VC firms behind them that are saying, hey, you have to fill every available spot, get our marketing team on it. So I think that's going to be interesting. It's a challenge that Posh Outdoors is going to face if we get to the point where we have that next round of financing, and it'll be interesting to see how the industry evolves as people take on more investment and there are more kind of competing voices, and whether you can still retain that kind of independence that has got you that far already.
Can I add a little bit to the journey and give a little plug for Sage?
Please.
No, because it's maybe Bygnal had the same experience, but it's a real thing. We had our lender lined up, we had terms agreed to, we had a term sheet, and we were going through the due diligence with this bank, and they said we want to have someone come out and appraise the property because we had 2 units already up, and we were going to be adding more, and they came back and said we cannot find someone who will appraise this. They're tents. They don't know how to value them. They look like they're permanent, but then they're soft, and so they're just kind of in no man's land. And so, I mean, I thought we were like dead in the water, like Bygnal said, like because I can't get an appraisal, we can't close this loan. And so I called out of desperation. I called Ruben at the Glamping Association. I was like, you ever had this happen? Please tell me you have someone who can help me. And he referred us to Sage and Sherry. And I mean, that was a huge step to not have to go back to the drawing board and seize plans, and redraft all this stuff that we had worked so hard to do. And Sage was able to come through with an appraisal that met the requirements for the bank, give us a positive valuation that we needed to close and keep things going. But for a period of time, I really thought like this won't work. We can't do this. And Sage was a huge lifesaver for us. Yeah.
Well, this has been
I'll
an
second
excellent this has been an excellent episode of the Sage Outdoor Advisory podcast. But, we are coming to the end. One last question before we go into the plug section is, I don't know whether either of you have anything going on at the minute where you're kind of not stuck, but you're facing. Is anyone facing a particular challenge at the minute that that you're trying to figure out, and that it might be worth kind of sharing and brainstorming on?
For me, I think it's kind of 2 pieces. One is really trying to get for us, it's trying to get our sales and marketing, like, we kind of throws underneath one hat. It's like, hey, when do you kind of split those hats? How do you make it work for a small property or a boutique, like from revenue management to your social media marketing, and kind of making sure that's kind of all structured right. And then just your software. I mean, in the glamping, it's not really a hotel. It's kind of different. So you need different needs. And so we've gone through a couple different booking platforms and softwares. And so it just feels like it's a constant revolving door as you continue to grow and evolve, that it's just always a challenge. So those are kind of my 2 big ones.
I'd say ours are having a better grip on what marketing efforts and dollars are most effective and which ones are not. It can become, you can kind of drive yourself crazy to try and track, like, is this working? Is this not? Because there are various reasons why people are maybe coming to your site that you just can't know. And so trying to kind of hone that in. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot of things that work, a lot of things that don't. But I think I had this idea in my head that I'm going to know, like, this is the exact amount of money to spend on ads. This is the exact amount of money to spend on influencer marketing and all that. And it's a little bit more messy, a little more art than science, I think. But we're trying to be a little more science than art. And so that's been kind of something that I've been focused on. And then we're trying to figure out what is the optimal size for Walden for this property and maybe future properties, because 15 is a little bit hard math wise with all the fixed operating costs that go into running any property. Any subscription you're going to pay is going to be the same whether you have 2 rooms or 100. Staff is going to change a little bit, but incrementally. And so I'm working on kind of an expansion plan for phase 3 that can hopefully get us out of right now. We hire seasonally. We have 3 full-time on-site staff plus a sales manager who's in Austin. And then we hire seasonal workers, usually 2, to come for like fall and spring seasons when we're really busy. But that makes it hard for staff. I mean, sometimes we're super slow and there's not a lot of work. And so we're reallocating hours. And as a business owner, I'd love to offer our staff, better wages, better hours, and just stay busier. And that really comes down to just having a property that's bigger, that can accommodate more guests, more people, larger groups, but not to the point where it diminishes the experience that everyone gets while they're there. There really is a fine line between having 150 rooms. It's like, well, everyone's making noise and it's dirty and, versus, something that's a little bit more boutique still feeling. So trying to figure that out right now.
Would you have an answer if you were to open a new site up tomorrow, what your perfect number of units would be?
I was just going to ask that.
On what size property?
If let's say at your current site, knowing everything you know now, hindsight, you were about to start from zero, and let's say you had, a relatively unlimited budget, what do you think would be the right amount of units for your current property?
I think like 40. And we're on 96 acres, 2/3 of which is what I would consider developable, and another third is really not. It's river and cliffs and super rocky terrain that you just wouldn't want to do anything with. So, yeah, but also on the demand side, weekends there, we're full just about every single weekend of the year, but weekdays we're not. But we get a lot of corporate event inquiries who want to have 50 people, and we're just like, well, we can have 15, and the others can stay down the road in town. That just normally is a deal breaker. So, but 40 rooms would still feel. I mean, as far as hotels go, that's really small still. It's very small. But these are obviously kind of a different beast. The layout is differently, and it's not one structure. It's obviously 40. So,
are you confident enough in the demand? Obviously, like 40 is a lot more than 15. I guess, would you be confident to pull trigger on that there's enough demand to run a full enough and profitable property?
Well, yeah, it's that plus other facilities and amenities that we don't have, like a pool, like a coffee shop or a beer hall, like a pickleball court, just other things that are attractive to the guests that would help shoulder seasons, summer, especially summer when it's just blazing hot. But if there's an amazing pool and a cafe or something like that there, then that would make sense to them in their mind. It would kind of put them over the edge of getting over the fact that it's hot. And again, going back to weekends, but and we would still have seasonal staffing, for when it's super busy. But our full-time staff, we wouldn't have to cut hours if we're not busy during that time, because the weekends would float us, through the rest of the year.
Bygnal, what would your sweet spot? What would your sweet spot? Oh my god, it's been going on far too long. What would your sweet spot? Right, you know what I'm trying to say.
He was going to say sweet sauce. Sweet sauce. There we go.
I'm not going to ask it again. You know what I was trying to say, Bygnal.
All right, we'll do some mind communication here.
Yeah. What would your sweet spot be? There you go.
Hey,
you got it, nailed it. That's a hard one because with how our property is, we have a lot of terrain challenges. And in order to keep the intimate experience that we've actually created for our guests and the privacy, the seclusion, being 200 or 300 feet from each camp, to really make that work here, we'd have to have a lot more property. Even though we do have 80 acres, probably only about 25, 30 acres of that is actually really usable. And the other section's up on top of a mesa top, which is 400 feet above us, and it's just sheer pretty much cliffs. And so trying to get access up to there is our next challenge. If we could get access to it, we could definitely expand another 10 to 15 units, and I would be eternally grateful. If we get up to say 30 units, I'd be feeling really good, because we'd be able to get some of those smaller retreats, smaller weddings. Like with Blake with 40 to 50, that'd be great. But like to me, with this open sky spot, I think we'd kind of lose our touch at that point. But yeah, it's a challenge.
Great. Well, Connor, have you got any other questions before we finish off?
I had one other random thought pop up, and that was just, you guys mentioned how heat in the summer is a really big thing. And I think one of you mentioned cold plunges, but I do feel like you mentioned bringing, I think, ice to the bathroom in the unit, but it would be interesting just to have a central cold plunge area, $5,000-$10,000, simply so when it is the hot summer, it could be something on your homepage when guests are booking, be like, beat the heat, with cold therapy or something. Would be an interesting anecdote.
There's one thing Connor loves talking about more than Sage. It's talking about cold plunges.
I don't really think, but the only thing is, I think we've maybe sold like 3 cold plunge packages. I don't know. It's just not, and we have 4 of the rooms have like a wood fired hot tub on the deck. And so, but in the summertime, it's obviously not a hot tub. Or doesn't, you can just heat it by just having it out in the sun. But, so that's actually where people would do it. But some people have done it in the room, in the bathtub that every tent has. But it's not a huge demand. I mean, that's a pretty unique subset of people who like really, like doing that. And maybe cold plunge is we're using the wrong term, because the idea is not that it's like 38 degrees or something. It's like, it's cool. It's 70 degrees, it's something that's like refreshing and cold, not like, Joe Rogan style. You can only stay in it for, 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think a pool, most folks would actually enjoy a pool more. So if he's going to invest your money into like a central community pool, is where your dollars should go.
Blake, how much more do you get for a unit with a private hot tub?
$30 to $50 a night.
Would you say those units are in more or less demand than the other units?
More. Yeah, more. We've done analysis to see that when there's both available, they book first. Yeah.
How much did it cost to install your hot tub?
Well, we kind of created our own. Like, this is still kind of going back to like, we're testing it first before we put like real money into it. So instead of like a legit, like, have you seen those Oku tubs? They were at the glamping show. They're really nice. They're precast concrete outdoor tubs. We just used like a $100 horse trough that you can buy at the hardware store. But we painted it black, and then you seal the inside with this special paint and coating. So then the heater itself is the most expensive part. I say we probably spent in materials like $2,500, and then maybe another $1,000 in labor. Our maintenance staff at the time, he was the one who kind of fabricated all the different stuff. So they work, but our point was like, let's see if this is actually even worth it. How do they work? Do they heat properly? Because these are the ones that there's no moving parts, no pumps, no power, no nothing. It just, in the wintertime, it heats through thermosiphoning.
Yeah, easy math on that would be, let's say, $3,500 for the hot tub and maybe $500 in maintenance throughout the year. And if it's getting you an extra $40 per booking, that pays off in its first 100 bookings, which presumably would happen in its first year. So, I mean, that seems like a pretty easy choice to me.
The ones we have are, a little more heavy on the maintenance side, which is why we want to then, I think, install something that's a little bit nicer and long-term and uses less water. So that's kind of what our next move will be.
All right. Last question for you guys. Presumably you guys are familiar with each other's properties, business stories a little bit, but I was just curious if you guys have anything that you really admire about the other person's property or operation, or about their story, or just something that you'd appreciate that you would want to share.
I do. Yeah, ever since meeting Bygnal and seeing Open Sky develop, I've been just blown away with the design and the level of build out and detail that they've incorporated into their rooms. I mean, I think they've, for a tent, taken it to the next level. Like it's just amazing what they've designed and built, and just a lot of the different cool ideas around how they've landscaped them. And I think one of the units has like a big glass window above the bed. I just thought that was really cool, and something I think they've done exceptionally well is design something that's really one of a kind. So I've always appreciated getting to see kind of what's new and how they've developed and designed the property. And you've been on my short list of places. I need to find an excuse to come out to Zion. Maybe we'll do it next year when the baby's old enough to leave. We'll come next summer maybe. So would love to trade visits.
Yeah, we'd love to take care of you.
I was going to suggest maybe we could set up some sort of glamping exchange program of operators, where people could go check out a similar operator in a different state and just like spend a weekend with the other person, see how they're running things, ask questions, and then reciprocate that. Would you guys ever do a little exchange, a little exchange program, peek under the hood?
As long as it's, in separate markets, 100%.
Yeah. Very cool.
Nice way to end it. Nice vibes. Anyone got anything that they want to plug before we finish off?
For me, it's mostly just like keep listening to the show. Check out Nick. Check out Posh Outdoors. Check out Connor and Sage Outdoor Advisory. Check out Blake, Walden Retreats. Like, come spend a weekend there. And then also too, if you're ever in the Zion area, come check out Open Sky. Come, even if you don't come stay with us, at least come check out Black Sage. Come let us have a really delicious outdoor experience with some fine dining, and just kind of immerse yourself into nature. And I love being on this show, and you guys are doing phenomenal. So that's all I have to say.
I would say for people to get outdoors, get outside, go stay in a place that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, like do something that's off the beaten path, do something that's not going to like just keep you in your comfort zone. And do something that is, as much as you can, technology free. Read a book, journal, talk with a friend, take a nap in a hammock, just all these things that I think were so natural to us and normal to the rhythm of life have been evacuated from our daily living. And I think they're crucial to well-being and flourishing and taking time to do that. And so wherever you are, wherever, you have access to, whether it's a state park or, a property like Walden or Open Sky, just find a way to get outside, get outdoors, and enjoy it while you can.
I think that's a perfect way to end it, given the nature of the first question. So yeah, well, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. That's the second time we've had two operators on at the same time, and I think it's worked really well. So go and stay at Open Sky, go and stay at Walden, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from you again on the podcast soon.
You guys are the best, you know that? Just thanks for everything. Thanks for being you. Thanks for creating awesome properties and experience and helping other operators. You guys have done a lot. So for me personally, and I think the industry as a whole. So thank you both deeply, and we look forward to maybe grabbing some beers at the show.
Let's do it. We'll see you then.
Yeah. Everyone listening to this, go and watch the YouTube version as well, so you can see what the guys look like, because they will be milling around the Glamping show. So go and say hello if you've enjoyed hearing from them.
Cheers.
And come to booth 501.
All right.
And invest in Posh.
Yeah, invest in Posh every time.
Thanks, guys. See you at the conference.
Right.
Yep. See you, gents.